Getting an API key. So far in this course, we have covered the basics of Gemini and its API, including its models, structure, functions, and how to format inputs to get specific output. Now, we will engage with the Gemini API through practical exercises. In this video, we will walk through creating an API key in Google AI Studio, where you can manage your Gemini API account, models, settings, and usage. The Studio allows you to experiment with both stable and preview models before integrating them into your applications. Creating the API key is essential for authenticated access to the Gemini API. To begin, go to asstudio.google.com and sign in with your Gmail account. If you haven't already signed in, you'll be prompted to do so. To get started, log in and navigate to the dashboard's top left corner, then click on the Get API Key link. This will take you to the API Keys page, where you can manage and generate new keys. To create a new key, click the Create API Key button to open a dialog box. Ensure you are operating within an existing Google Cloud Platform (GCP) project by searching for it using the search bar and selecting it. If you need to set up a new GCP project, visit cloud.google.com and access the Google Cloud Console while logged into your Gmail account. The free tier options are sufficient for our purposes. Once on the Google Cloud Platform homepage, click on Console at the top right corner, then select New Project from the Project drop-down menu. Enter a name for your project, such as My Demo Gemini API Project. Leave the location as No Organization and click on Create. After creating your project, navigate back to the Google AI Studio API Keys page and refresh it to update the project list. Click on the Create API Key button once more. Locate your project from the updated list, select it, and then click Create API Key in Existing Project to generate your Gemini API key. Google AI Studio will generate the key for you. Ensure you copy and securely store it. Avoid sharing this key publicly. If you don't see the key immediately in your API Keys table, refresh the page. The table will display a shortened version of the key along with the project name, creation date, and an option to delete it. You can easily view and copy the key by clicking on its shortened version. Once you have your API key, we can move forward to explore the API demos in this section. But before that, let's dive into the API endpoints in the next API structure, models, and endpoints. Before we explore practical demonstrations using the Gemini API, it's essential to grasp its underlying structure. As part of Google's suite of generative AI tools, the Gemini API is accessed through https://generativelanguage.googleapis.com, serving as the endpoint for these advanced capabilities. Detailed documentation for all available endpoints, resources, and functions can be found at ai.google.dev//rest, covering both V1 and V1 beta versions of the API. When making requests to the Gemini API, the URL structure follows a specific pattern. HTTP base URLs for source left model method key API key. Here, base URL refers to the service endpoint at generativelanguage.googleapis.com. You'll specify either V1 or V1 beta as the version, depending on your API preference. The resource parameter is consistently models for the Gemini API. Following this, indicate the model type, such as Gemini Pro or Gemini Pro Vision, followed by a colon and the desired method, e.g., count tokens or generate content. Lastly, include the key parameter, where you insert your API key obtained from a prior setup, ensuring proper authentication. It's important to note that the list and get methods within the model resource have distinct request formats, as detailed in our documentation. Imagine we want to interact with the Gemini API to receive an AI-generated response. The endpoint URL would be http://generativelanguage.googleapis.com/vmodels Gemini Pro generate content key API key. This URL includes content as the base URL, version, V1, models resource specifying the Gemini Pro model, and the method generate content. Every API method requires specific data formatting within the request body. Refer to the REST API documentation at ai.google.dev/pi/rest. Navigate to the models resource under version V1 and explore generate content to view a JSON representation outlining the expected structure of the request body. The contents array, a mandatory field containing objects of the content type, text and images, is crucial. For a detailed breakdown of the content type structure, consult the provided documentation. With this knowledge, we're ready to make our initial query to the Gemini API using the REST API. Using the REST API, In this tutorial, we'll guide you through using the Gemini API via REST, starting with how to initiate requests. To interact with the API, you'll require an HTTP client. While options like CRL are available, I find Postman's intuitive interface preferable. You can download Postman for free from their official website, compatible with all major platforms. Once installed, launch Postman to begin our demonstration. To invoke the Gemini Pro model via the Generate Content method, initiate a post request in Postman with the base URL generativelanguage.googleapes.com/v1models/Gemini Pro, key is your API key. Configure the request body in JSON format, specifying a prompt like, write a short piece on hummingbirds. Send the request and verify the response for generated text. Future tutorials will cover SDKs for easier integration with Gemini. We previously used RESTful calls to interact with the Gemini API. Today, we're integrating a client SDK directly into our workflow for easier API interaction. Gemini provides SDKs for Python, Node.js, Golang, Android, and iOS with Swift. Today, we'll focus on using the Node.js SDK. Ensure node.js.org is installed, Node-V to check version 18+. Create a project folder, mkdir Gemini API demo, navigate into it, cd Gemini API demo, and initialize npm init-y. Install the Node.js client library npm install generative-AI. Open Visual Studio Code, create index.js, and import the Gemini API SDK. Const Google Generative AI, required Google/Generative AI. Initialize with your API key. Const Google Gen AI, it's new Google Generative AI, your API key. Define an async function run prompt to handle API requests. Configure the Generative AI object for the Gemini Pro model. Craft a prompt like, write a short piece on hummingbirds and pass it to generate content. Print the response and run prompt with node index.js. Using client SDKs simplifies Gemini API interaction. Stay tuned for more in our Gemini API series. Conclusion. I trust you found this introduction to the Gemini API both engaging and enlightening. This course is designed to furnish you with a robust comprehension of integrating the Gemini API into your applications. LinkedIn Learning Library boasts a diverse array of AI courses, and I enthusiastically recommend my other offering, Building an Image Caption Generator using the Gemini API. This hands-on course will walk you through crafting a complete application that harnesses the Gemini API's AI capabilities. Whether you're a developer aiming to enrich your applications with AI functionalities, or a data scientist keen on crafting bespoke AI models, our library caters to all. I encourage you to delve deeper into our courses to broaden your expertise in AI application development. Once again, I'm Fikayo Adepoju. Connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter @CoderOnFleek, and explore my projects on GitHub @CoderOnFleek. Happy coding!